Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Now, in a week marked by heightened rhetoric amidst renewed military threats from Moscow, President Putin's latest comments, claiming that the whole of Ukraine is ours, have sparked controversy. Now, to talk more about this and what this means is Roland Freudenstein, the co-founder of Brussels Freedom Hub. Great to have you on the program. So let's talk about this. So how seriously should Europe take Putin's claim here, what he said in the last 24 hours?
Well, good morning, Sasha, and I think we should take it extremely seriously. Well, actually, in Petersburg, Putin said two things. One, he did somehow recognize a Ukrainian state by referring to the 1991 Declaration of Independence of Ukraine, and of course, emphasizing that they promised to remain neutral and so on. And then he said, wherever a Russian soldier puts his foot down, that is ours. And he also reiterated his claim that essentially Russians and Ukrainians are one people, as he puts it, which is all a bit contradictory. And I think we should definitely believe him that he does not recognize a Ukraine which itself decides where to go and what political system to have, and that he definitely believes in military conquest. And that actually came as a shock to some, especially West Europeans, strangely enough. But it was an unexpected militaristic statement that had its effects in Europe.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we've heard similar things like this from Putin before. I mean, is this more psychological warfare? Is this an escalation? How do you interpret this? You've been following this for a long time.
Yeah, it is definitely language getting stronger. He used to be at least seemingly more cooperative in the past. He now doesn't talk anymore about respecting sovereign countries in his neighborhood. He basically says that Russia will decide what its borders are, and Russia will decide whether neighboring countries will remain sovereign or not. And that is an escalation, if you want.
Mm-hmm. So how does this have any impact on any peace talks? This has effectively killed it. I mean, we've heard this before, like you said, but how does it impact any sort of ceasefire, peace talks in the near future?
Well, as long as his attitude is as it is now, Ukraine, there is no compromise that Ukraine could construct or anybody else could construct between Ukraine and Russia. I think that there's only one way to change that situation, which is that the military losses and the economic problems of Russia grow so exponentially that Putin's refusal to actually engage in serious negotiations which involve compromise become untenable. And that's the only way.
Mm-hmm. And we're observing some more advances by the Russians in Sumy particularly. So is this something that NATO needs to respond by? Do you see any sort of reaction here? What should the alliance and the rest of Europe do in this regard?
Look, we should always step up our assistance to Ukraine. The U.S. assistance under the current scheme will run out by the end of summer. We have no idea whether there will be a prolongation. Whether Europeans will be able to fill that gap is very doubtful. And on the other hand, I think Russia is not militarily capable of achieving a breakthrough and then using it to strategically step forward. They can break through the Ukrainian front line in some places. Sumy is one example. But to exploit that for a lasting strategic push into Ukraine's heartland, I think they just, as far as I know, they do not have the troops and they do not have the equipment. So we're talking about a slow degradation on both sides. Russia has the bigger potential for mobilization still. And especially what Russia can, how Russia can damage Ukraine is through the drones and missile attacks that are now, and bombings, of course, with glide bombs that are happening now with increasing frequency, which is why air defense, providing air defense to Ukraine is a particular priority.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned degradation. I mean, just as we're talking now, you said certain attacks on Sumy was recovering right now. So I'm just curious in terms of like what's happened during the NATO summit. I mean, if we look at the declarations, for instance, there's much less mention of Ukraine, almost no mention of Ukraine in that final summit statement. There's like 6 paragraphs. If we look at Washington, if we look at Vilnius, there's, I think I counted it yesterday, it was like 45, 46 mentions of it. So what do you make of that? Is this now still a priority for NATO, or is this now gone as a secondary sort of tier in terms of priority?
No, I think it's a priority for most NATO member states, but not for the biggest, which is the United States. And that's what has changed compared to previous NATO summits. Now Donald J. Trump is US president, and for Donald J. Trump, helping Ukraine is indeed not a priority, nor is talking about Russia or talking about China and their threat to Western democracies. All these topics took second rank compared to pandering to the moods of the US president. I mean, it was like almost ridiculous. If you look at the NATO Secretary Mark Rutte's email message to text message to Donald Trump, I mean, it looked like a caricature, but it was actually meant seriously. When Rutte imitated Trump's style, even including the writing in caps of certain words, I mean, that's what the NATO summit was all about, Like, God forbid Trump throws a fit and screams at everyone and the media, So in order to avoid that, NATO member states bent over backwards instead of talking about what should really be the topic of a NATO summit, which is threats to Western democracies. It's a pity that it was like this, but indeed, NATO's collapse was avoided another time, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're coming to the end of the European Council there. I mean, do you see any progress here? I mean, I know that Slovakia was sort of in and out of the support of sanctions. With the 18th package here, do you see this as a kind of new way here? Do you see more progress? Is this going to be brought across the line in the next few weeks and days, potentially? How do you see it?
Well, I mean, Slovakia is not the main problem. Hungary is. And there, with the successful NATO summit and with the defense spending going up in Europe, which was a big goal of Donald Trump, I think that we could expect the US president also to exert some pressure on his special friend Viktor Orban to maybe not veto the sanctions package and the rollover also of the freezing of the financial assets of Russia. That's the other big topic where there's disagreement between most member states and Hungary and Slovakia. So if Hungary comes around, thanks to some cooperation from Washington, then I think we can safely somehow get this across the finishing line. If not, then we'll have to go into a very complex system of the remaining 25, or maybe with Slovakia, 26 member states enacting sanctions, circumventing Hungary outside the structures of the European Union. It's not impossible, but it takes a lot more work. So it would be much, much better for the European Union and for the West as a whole, and for Ukraine, of course, if these obstacles and these vetoes could be overcome.
Right. And at the same time, we know that it's the first premiere of German Chancellor Mr. Merz right there in the heart of Brussels. So I think he's been pushing this as well. So we'll see how his impact will affect all this. So we'll close it there. Thank you so much, Roland Freudenstein there, the co-founder of Brussels Freedom Hub. Thank you so much for that. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That concludes this edition of World Talks. My name is Sasha Farbach. We'll stay tuned right here for more on TVP World. Goodbye.